Hello everyone and welcome back to M.A.R.S for another nature figure review. Today we're looking at one of my most anticipated figures for 2025, that of course being Baki Hanma from Storm Collectibles. Now this is actually the third Baki Hanma release from Storm Collectibles, and unfortunately I don't have the other two to give you a side-by-side comparison for this figure today. However, I highly recommend you go check out Mr. Lee on Instagram, as he does have a side-by-side of all three characters, and what I can tell you is that this Baki is the more refined and toned down Baki from the previous releases that we've gotten so far. Basically, this is your season 2 Baki, where he just left the prison fighting Biscuit Oliver and going to Japan to confront his dad, Yujiro Hanma. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get this figure out of the box and see what all it comes with. All right, now, with this Baki release, you are going to be getting a total of 4 head sculpts. They all look really great. You're going to be getting a total of 6 pairs of hands, 2 pairs of feet. We have his shoes right now being covered by the snow, but you are getting 2 pairs of feet. And then you're also going to be getting 2 pegs as well. Should anything break or anything happen to the figure, you've got a replacement there. And then lastly, you are going to be getting his street clothes to be put on the figure and to be worn. Really great set, completing this Baki release here. Now, let's go ahead and get this figure out of the plastic and start off with some size comparisons. To kick off our size comparisons, we have Yujiro Hanma from Storm Collectibles and Evil Ryu from Storm Collectibles. And yes, a snowy Baki to go with that. Let's continue on down the lines. Here we have Marvel Legends Deadpool and Marvel Legends The Hulk. And then lastly, we have SH Figuarts Kazuya Mishima and Jada Toys and Bison. Now, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the head sculpts. Alrighty, here's our first head sculpt that Baki comes with. And you can see for the most part, it's just a natural, stern looking head sculpt. It really looks phenomenal, especially compared to the previous releases. Maybe not so much the battle damage, but definitely the first issue release Baki from Storm. I think this is leagues above that original head sculpt that we got with that figure. And really just going back to what I was saying earlier about this is the more redefined and toned down Baki that he needs to be to fight the ogre. So let's go ahead and keep going down these head sculpts. Here's our next head sculpt of him just yelling, a very aggressive expression that we're getting here. It looks really clean from the hair spikes all the way around. It really does look like a phenomenal head sculpt here as well, and that's something that's prevalent with Storm. So let's go ahead and keep going down here. Up next we have our punched head sculpt, looking really good. I like the little drips of blood there that we're getting on the nose and the mouth. Very appropriate and necessary for Baki, because anybody can punch Baki at this point. And then for our last head sculpt, we have Baki going Super Saiyan. I'm kidding, but this is just the head sculpt for him moving swiftly as he approaches his opponent. Now, let's look at the pairs of hands. For our first pairs of hands, we have our fists here that come default with the figure. Up next, we have our opened hands. Here we have his open, relaxed hands. Here is the first set of the gripping hands. Here's our second gripping hands, and the difference you'll notice with this one is going to be the pinky. It's standing out a little bit away from the other fingers. And then for our last pairs of hands, we have the taunting hands, pretty much like, come on, let's go type of hands here. And with that out of the way, let's now go ahead and get into the uniform real quick and put that on Baki. Before I forget, I want to let you know, in that whole last segment, I have no issues with the pegs for the hands. Just adding to the quality for Storm Collectible as the sun rains down on Baki. Now let's get into that uniform. All right, everyone, I've actually decided I'm going to head back to the house to switch out the uniform, and I'll record all that for you. But before I do that, I do actually want to go over the presentation of the figure. Now again, this Baki is going to be the Baki that you see in season 2 of the Netflix series, where he goes to the prison, he fights Biscuit Oliver. That is this Baki here. And you can see just how well the figure turned out. And here on the back, that's the big thing and the big difference between this figure and the first release and the battle damage release Baki, is that now the back is more refined, it's more toned, and it just looks 1,000 times better in my opinion. We now have that demon face, so he is ready to take on the ogre, so to speak. For the articulation with this figure, I don't want to do nothing too crazy, because look at that. It's pretty cold outside. If you've gotten any of the Baki figures or you've seen my previous reviews, then you kind of know what to expect. This is pretty much the same body for the articulation. The only difference with this body is really the soft goods and maybe a little bit more shading. I will say, you know, for the most part, this is all silicone and stuff like that, but the abdomen, the only part that's really silicone on this figure is going to be like the upper torso. The abdomen, the legs, and all that's like harder plastic, so I think that just gives more detailing for the figure. And I think it just helps the figure overall aesthetically. And you've got some cuts here as well, which I don't remember seeing these kind of cuts on the regular Baki release that are this highlighted and refined. So that's just pretty much what to expect with this figure. Again, I am going to do the other part with swapping out the clothes and the articulation. Like I said, if you want to see the articulation for this figure, check those other reviews. The articulation's there for this figure. It's just, it's cold outside and I don't want to damage the figure more than it necessarily needs to. All right, we've made it back into the house. So now I'm going to show you how you put on his street clothes attire. Let's begin. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and when it's all said and done, this is how Baki should look. The shirt's a little tight. I think it's like a spandex material. A bit of a struggle to put it on, but once it's done, you can see how badass it looks. So this is our Baki in his street clothes. Thank you all for watching the review, and we'll see you all in the next one.